Hey guys, so in this video I'm going to talk about a bit of a controversy from the Cadet and Junior World Championships that is currently going on, taking place in Wuxi, China. The controversy centers around the final touch of the Cadet Women's Sabre event between Amalia Covaliu of Romania and Pan Chi Miao of China. The score is 14-14, so whoever wins this touch will be crowned world champion. Now, for most people vaguely familiar with sabre fencing, what happened here is pretty clear. Covaliu rushes in, makes a swing and misses, which means that Pan's action will take priority. I did a poll on my Instagram, and out of over 3,000 responses, 77% believed that Pan should have been awarded the touch. But after consulting the video, the referee, Andreas Douvis, awards the touch to Covaliu with the following phrase. So basically, Douvis says that Covaliu misses, Pan searches for the blade, and so the priority returns to Covaliu. Now, we could argue for hours over what constitutes a search. Unfortunately, it's pretty common for referees to say, oh, you looked for parry 3, you looked for tierce, which is pretty frustrating given that parry 3 is literally just the on-guard position, but whatever. In this case, it's actually all pretty irrelevant because there is actually an additional reason why Covaliu should not be awarded the touch, which is even clearer and even more concrete. Before she registers her touch, Covaliu is off the piste with both feet. The rules are pretty clear that you can't score a hit with both feet off the piste. Now, immediately after the touch, we see this guy walk over to the video review table. This is one of the assistant referees whose job is to help watch for when a fencer steps off the piste. The way he walks over immediately makes me think that he noticed that Covaliu was out, as he should, because that's literally his job. In an article by China Daily, it claims that an assistant judge confirmed the fact that Covaliu stepped out of bounds. So basically it looks like Douvis just decided to ignore this and give the touch to Covaliu anyway. To make matters worse, this was actually the second time in the bout that Covaliu was awarded a touch from hitting after stepping off the side. And this touch also went to video review, so there really was no excuse for not noticing this. Now, often after these kind of incidents where bad calls are made, people look for links between all the peoples involved and look for motives why one fencer might be given preferential treatment over another. But to be honest, I'm not especially convinced that there was such a conspiracy in this particular match. If the ref really wanted to swing the bout in Covaliu's favour, he would have called some of these actions here in her favour, which he didn't do. But ultimately, you also kind of have to know that Douvis just has a really long history of messing up, particularly when there is just a little bit more pressure on him. Some of you might remember this disaster class from Warsaw 2015 between Bujkovic and Sandro Bazadze. Both fencers got increasingly frustrated with his decisions. He let the match get completely out of control with all sorts of shenanigans that could have been avoided by a more competent ref.
Yellow pass.
The match ended up lasting over 37 minutes, which might still be the record for the longest sabre match recorded. A more recent disaster class of his was this match between Patrice and Bazadze in 2024, where again Douvis lets things escalate to the extreme and makes some very questionable decisions, irritating both fencers. And then there's this classic moment.
Douvis. No. What? What the heck?
No, impossible change. No change the touch. No change, don't give me nothing.
And just for good measure, here's another obvious Douvis fumble.
Ooh, Kim falls short. Patrice going for it. Oh, they both claim it. I think it might go to Patrice. Douvis is having a look at the video review. Ooh, Kim falls short. Patrice going for it. Oh no, he's giving it power riposte. He's giving it power riposte.
Now, after all of these refereeing disasters, Douvis never seemed to face any consequences. In fact, he was only ever rewarded with selections for big events, including even the Olympics. However, for the recent Wuxi incident, we saw for the first time an official acknowledgement from the FIE that he had messed up. On Thursday, the FIE sent the following letter to the Chinese Fencing Federation. To the attention of the Chinese Fencing Federation, dear colleagues, we refer to your letter of the 9th of April 2025 related to the individual final of the Cadet Women's Sabre at the World Junior and Cadet Fencing Championships in Wuxi. The FIE Bureau met to review the facts and evidence on that matter. Consequently, the FIE Bureau took immediate decisions regarding the officials concerned who were already notified about the following. So the referee of the bout was notified of a cancellation of the financial bonus for the event, a cancellation of all designations until the end of the season with immediate effect. The referee delegates, the two delegates responsible for Sabre and the president of the referee commission, received an official warning, and the video referees and assistant referees of the bout also received an official warning. We fully share your belief about the importance of preserving both the well-being of athletes and the integrity of the fencing competitions. Best regards, Gulnora Saidova, FIE Secretary General. Now, the letter is a little vague and lacks context on its own. Apparently, this is in reply to an appeal lodged by the Chinese, which presumably refers to the mistakes made at 1414. But from this letter alone, they don't really specify exactly the reason that these officials received disciplinary action. But this is the first time I have ever seen such a response from the FIE. I think it's probably worth mentioning that this letter wasn't made publicly visible by the FIE, so maybe similar decisions have been made before but kept under wraps. I don't really trust that the FIE is particularly transparent when it comes to these issues, so maybe it's happened before and no one's ever really known. I don't know. So, we've got to ask the question, after decades of refereeing mistakes being completely ignored, why now does the FIE decide to respond? What is so special about this case compared to all the other mistakes that happen? Well, I think the answer is pretty simple. This story centered on a Chinese fencer being robbed in China. At these kind of events, it's not unusual to have fairly high-ranking politicians in attendance. For example, at the 2023 World Championships in Plovdiv, the president of Bulgaria made an appearance. If there were in fact high-ranking CCP members in attendance, they would probably have some pretty serious leverage over the FIE. Maybe they could even threaten to cancel the rest of the event. Apparently the whole story went pretty big on Chinese social media, so the Chinese authorities will probably have been pretty motivated to save face in some way or the other. An additional detail that I think is pretty important is that the president of the Chinese Fencing Association, Wang Haibin, also sits on the FIE Executive Committee. Supposedly this is the body that held an emergency meeting to discuss the appeal made by the Chinese. So is this a case where Mr. Wang basically appealed to himself? I can't really find any records from this meeting, so it's hard to say whether or not he was involved or not. But a bit of transparency from the FIE would probably help in this situation. Don't get me wrong, I think in this particular case it is good that there has been an attempt made by the FIE to acknowledge a mistake, and hopefully this provides incentive for referees to apply the rules correctly in the future. But it would be very naive to think that the FIE has all of a sudden decided to try and fix the endemic refereeing problem, particularly in sabre fencing. Fencers should expect to receive equal treatment regardless of who their opponent is or where the event is taking place. If Pan was from any other country, I would be very surprised if the FIE would have responded in the way that they did. And also, the FIA should take responsibility in that Douvis should just not be allowed to referee these kind of events. He's clearly not good enough. And it's not his fault he was refereeing the event, it's the fault of the officials who put him in that position. I am also reminded of the final of the 2019 World Championships between Hungary and Korea, which took place in Budapest in Hungary. Korea beat Hungary in a very exciting close match. There was a massive Hungarian crowd, and apparently the Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban was in attendance. After the match, for some reason, the FIE decided to send home the two referees. Now, in a press conference, the Hungarian team dismissed the idea that the referees were to blame for their defeat. But clearly, some people in the FIE were not happy with the result and decided to punish the refs. Referees should be pressured to apply the rules fairly and consistently. They should not be pressured in such a way that if a particular team or fencer doesn't win, then they might face personal consequences. These issues aren't going to just disappear on their own, and if the fencers are actually as frustrated with these issues as they claim to be, then they should start taking action to try and fix their sport. I might make a bit of a video more specifically on this topic later, but that's all for now. Thanks for watching, guys. See you. Bye.